In the quiet suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, Marcus Thompson lived what most people would call a blessed life. At 38, he had a stable job as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm, a loving wife named Elena, 2 bright kids in middle school, a paid-off mortgage, and a Sunday routine that included church, but only when it didn't conflict with football season or brunch plans. Marcus was the guy everyone liked, reliable, quick with a joke, generous with his time when it suited him. But deep down, he knew something was missing. A quiet voice had been whispering to him for years, and lately it had grown into a roar he could no longer drown out with podcasts, overtime, or another round of golf. It started small. Dreams of standing in front of crowds, speaking words that burned like fire in his chest. Visions of broken families healing, addicts finding freedom, young people turning from despair. He would wake up sweating, heart pounding, convinced it was just stress from work. But the dreams kept coming, sharper each time. Then came the confirmations, random strangers at the grocery store stopping him to say, "God has a plan for you, brother." A sermon at church that felt like it was preached directly to him. Scriptures jumping off the page during his rare quiet times. Jeremiah 1 verse 5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Ephesians 2 verse 10, about good works prepared in advance. One rainy Thursday evening in October, Marcus couldn't ignore it anymore. He was alone in his home office, staring at spreadsheets, when the presence hit him like a wave. No lightning, no audible voice from the sky, just an overwhelming certainty that filled the room. He fell to his knees as words formed in his spirit, clear as if spoken aloud. "Marcus, my son, I have chosen you for this hour. The assignment I gave you years ago, to speak my truth to the lost, to call my people back to holiness, to stand in the gap for a generation slipping into darkness, you have buried it under comfort and fear. I am patient, but the season is shifting. If you ignore this prophetic assignment one more time, you will regret it for the rest of your days. The doors I have held open will close. The grace I have extended will lift. Many will suffer because one man refused to rise. But if you obey, I will use you to shake this nation. Choose this day." Marcus wept. He knew exactly what the assignment was. For over a decade, he had felt called to leave his corporate job and start a ministry focused on inner-city youth, mentoring at-risk teens, teaching them identity in Christ, helping them escape cycles of poverty, violence, and hopelessness. He had the education, the charisma, the testimony of growing up in rough neighborhoods himself before scholarships carried him out. But every time he got close, fear whispered louder. What about the mortgage, the kids' college funds, Elena's security? You're not qualified. People will laugh. You'll fail. So he stayed put. He tithed, volunteered occasionally, prayed sporadically. Safe, comfortable, ignored. The next morning, he told Elena everything. She listened quietly, tears in her eyes. "Marcus, I've felt it too. I've seen how restless you've been. If God is speaking, we can't keep pretending it's nothing." But doubt crept back in fast. Bills arrived, his boss offered a promotion, the kids had soccer tournaments. Weeks turned into months. Marcus reasoned it away. "God will understand. He'll send someone else. I'm not the only one he can use." Then came the regrets, not dramatic at first, but steady like erosion. His son, Jamal, started hanging with the wrong crowd at school. Marcus tried talking, but the boy brushed him off. "Dad, you always talk about God, but you're too busy with your job to show me anything real." The words cut deep. Elena grew distant, exhausted from carrying the spiritual weight alone. Arguments flared over small things, but the root was bigger. Unspoken disappointment that her husband wouldn't step into what he was made for. At work, Marcus felt hollow. Promotions came, but the joy was gone.
He watched younger colleagues chase dreams while he crunched numbers that meant nothing eternal. One night, driving home from a late meeting, Marcus passed an old community center in his childhood neighborhood. Police tape fluttered outside, another shooting. A teenage boy lay covered on the sidewalk. Marcus pulled over, heart racing. He recognized the kid from years ago, one he'd mentored briefly at a church outreach before quitting to focus on family. He had texted him months earlier, "Mr. T, I need to talk. Things are bad." Marcus replied with a quick prayer emoji and never followed up. He sat in his car and sobbed. The whisper returned, softer now, but heavy with sorrow. "You were supposed to be there. This assignment was not optional. You chose comfort over obedience. Now the cost is paid in blood." Marcus drove home broken. That night, he knelt again, this time not in resistance, but surrender. "Lord, I'm sorry. I was afraid. I ignored your voice because I wanted control. Forgive me. If you'll still use me, I'll go, whatever it costs." The peace came slowly, like dawn after a long night. The next day, he resigned from his job. Elena stood by him, tears of relief. They sold the house, downsized, trusted God for provision. Marcus started small, Saturday mentoring sessions at the same community center. Word spread. Teens came, hurting, angry, skeptical, but he spoke truth with fire he hadn't felt in years. Lives shifted. One boy avoided a gang initiation because Marcus showed up at his door at 2 a.m. after a desperate text. A girl left an abusive home and found safety in a church family Marcus connected her to. Years passed. The ministry grew into rising sons and daughters, a network reaching thousands across Georgia and beyond. Marcus became known not for success, but for obedience. He never forgot the warning. He told his story often. God doesn't beg, He assigns, and when He says you'll regret ignoring this, He means it, not out of cruelty, but love, because every no echoes in eternity. Marcus grew older, gray creeping into his hair, but his eyes burned brighter. On his deathbed, surrounded by his family and dozens of young men and women he'd pulled from the fire, he whispered to Elena, "I almost lost it all for a paycheck and a quiet life, but God was faithful. Tell them, don't wait, the assignment is now." And in the silence that followed, those who heard knew the truth. The prophetic call wasn't just for Marcus, it was for every chosen one reading this story, feeling that same pull in their spirit. God is speaking. The assignment is clear. Ignore it, and you will regret it. Obey, and watch Him move mountains through your surrendered life.
In the sprawling suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, where the humid air clung to everything like a second skin and the skyline shimmered in the distance like a mirage of promise, Marcus Thompson had built what he considered the perfect American dream. At 38, he was the epitome of middle-class success, a senior accountant at Hargrove Financial, pulling in 6 figures with bonuses that paid for the family's annual Disney trips. His wife, Elena, a part-time graphic designer, kept their modern colonial home spotless and filled with the aroma of her famous peach cobbler. Their kids, Jamal, 13, with his lanky frame and insatiable curiosity for video games, and little Maya, 11, who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian, attended the best public schools in the district. Sundays were for church at First Grace Baptist, where Marcus served as an usher when he wasn't sneaking peeks at NFL scores on his phone. Life was predictable, comfortable, and utterly safe. But beneath the polished surface, a storm was brewing in Marcus's soul, one that had been gathering clouds for over a decade. It all began in his early 20s, fresh out of Morehouse College, when Marcus first heard the call. He was interning at a nonprofit in the heart of Atlanta's roughest neighborhoods, the same streets where he'd grown up dodging gangs and dreaming of escape. One night, during a prayer vigil for a slain teen, a wave of heat washed over him, not from the summer swelter, but from within. Words formed in his mind, unbidden and undeniable.
I have chosen you, Marcus. You will speak my truth to the forgotten ones. You will build bridges from despair to hope. This is your prophetic assignment." He dismissed it as exhaustion, but the dreams started that very night. Visions of him leading revival meetings in abandoned warehouses, counseling young men away from the lure of drugs and violence, empowering girls to break free from cycles of abuse. Scriptures haunted him. Isaiah 6:8, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And always the whisper, "Here am I, send me." But Marcus, he sent excuses instead. Fear was his constant companion. Growing up in the projects, he'd seen too many called men crash and burn, preachers who started strong but ended up broke, divorced, or worse. "God, I'm not ready," he'd pray. "I need stability first." So he pursued accounting, married Elena, bought the house in the suburbs. The call faded to a murmur, buried under spreadsheets and soccer practices. Occasionally, it resurfaced, a sermon that pierced his heart, a news story about youth violence that made him ache, but he'd push it down with rationalizations. "Someone else will do it. I'm providing for my family. That's ministry enough." Then came the turning point. On a stormy Thursday evening in October 2023, Marcus was alone in his home office, the rain lashing against the windows like accusations. He was reviewing quarterly reports when the air grew thick, charged with an invisible presence. His computer screen flickered, though the power was steady. He froze as the voice thundered in his spirit, not audible, but louder than any storm. "Marcus, my beloved son, I formed you for such a time as this. The assignment I etched into your destiny, to rise as a voice for the voiceless, to mentor the fatherless, to ignite revival in the inner cities, you have ignored it long enough. I have been patient, knocking gently at the door of your heart, but the hour is late. The youth of this nation are drowning in darkness, gangs, opioids, broken homes, digital addictions that steal their souls. I called you to be the light. If you bury this talent one more time, hiding behind your comfort and cowardice, you will regret it eternally. Doors of opportunity will slam shut. The grace that shields your family will be lifted. Lives I intended you to touch will be lost forever. But obey, and I will pour out my spirit upon you. Nations will hear of the miracles through your hands. Choose obedience, or live with the weight of what could have been." Marcus collapsed to the floor, tears mixing with the sweat on his face. The assignment crystallized in his mind. Leave the corporate world, start Rising Sons and Daughters, a ministry dedicated to at-risk youth. It would involve after-school programs, Bible studies disguised as life skills workshops, partnerships with local churches to provide food, counseling, and job training. He'd seen it all in those dreams. Teens transformed, families restored. But the cost, everything. Quitting his job meant no more 401k, no health insurance, no certainty. Elena might leave him. The kids would resent the upheaval. And what if he failed? The ridicule from old colleagues, the pitying looks at family reunions? Shaken, he confided in Elena that night over lukewarm coffee. She sat across from him at the kitchen island, her dark eyes wide with a mix of fear and faith. "Marcus, I've sensed this for years. Remember that women's retreat last year? The speaker prophesied over me about a husband's calling pulling us into adventure. I thought it was you." She squeezed his hand. "If God's in it, he'll provide. But are you sure?"
He wasn't. The next day at work, his boss, Mr. Hargrove, slapped a promotion offer on his desk. 20K raise, corner office. "You're indispensable, Thompson, this firm's future." Marcus took it, telling himself it was a sign from God to wait. Months blurred into a year. The dreams stopped, replaced by nightmares of missed opportunities. Jamal started skipping school, influenced by older kids flashing cash from shady deals. Maya withdrew, burying herself in books to escape the growing tension at home. Elena threw herself into freelance work, but her smiles grew forced. "We're fine," she'd say, but her prayers at night, overheard through thin walls, begged for breakthrough. The regrets piled up like unpaid bills. One evening, Marcus attended a networking event downtown. There, he ran into an old college buddy, Terrence, now a successful pastor with a thriving youth ministry in Chicago. "Man, remember those late-night talks about changing the world?" Terrence laughed. "I jumped in feet first. It's hard, but God's faithful." Marcus forced a grin, but inside, envy burned. That could have been him. Then tragedy struck. Driving home late one Friday, Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert: a mass shooting at a high school party in his old neighborhood. 5 dead, all under 18. He pulled over, scrolling through the details, his breath catching when he saw the names. One victim was Deshaun, a kid he'd briefly mentored years ago during a short-lived volunteer stint. Deshaun had reached out on social media 6 months prior. "Mr. T, life's crazy. Need advice on staying out of trouble." Marcus had liked the message, intended to reply, but got distracted by a work deadline. Now, Deshaun was gone. He slammed the steering wheel, screaming into the empty car. The voice returned, laced with divine sorrow. "This blood is on your hands, not because I condemn you, but because you refuse the role I assigned. How many more must fall before you rise?" That night marked the breaking. Marcus arrived home a wreck, collapsing into Elena's arms. "I can't do this anymore. The regret, it's killing me." They prayed together until dawn, Elena's faith bolstering his faltering resolve. "God redeems Marcus. It's not too late." The surrender was messy. He gave notice at work, enduring shocked reactions. "You're throwing it all away for some religious whim?" his boss scoffed. They sold the house, moving to a modest apartment closer to the city. Finances dipped dangerously low. Bills piled up. The kids complained about leaving friends behind. Jamal rebelled hardest, sneaking out one night to meet those bad influences. Marcus found him at 3 a.m., high on weed, tears streaming. "Why'd you drag us into this, Dad? We had it good." But in that raw moment, Marcus shared his testimony, the call, the ignoring, the regrets. For the first time, Jamal listened. "If God's real, prove it," the boy challenged. Marcus did. He launched Rising Sons and Daughters from a rented room in a community center, starting with 5 skeptical teens. He poured everything in: Bible lessons on identity, practical skills like resume writing, even field trips to colleges. Word spread through churches and social media. A local businessman, moved by Marcus's story shared at a men's breakfast, donated startup funds. Elena designed flyers and a website, her creativity blooming in ways it never had before. Challenges came in waves. A rival gang threatened the center after Marcus pulled a kid out of their ranks. Funding dried up during a recession. Maya got bullied at her new school for being that preacher kid. But obedience unlocked miracles. One night, during a prayer meeting, a skeptical teen named Keisha confessed years of abuse. Marcus connected her to counselors, and she found healing and faith. Jamal, inspired by his dad's grit, turned his life around, becoming a peer mentor. Elena rediscovered her passion, leading women's groups that empowered single moms. Years rolled on. By 2030, Rising Sons and Daughters had expanded to 3 cities, impacting thousands. Marcus traveled, speaking at conferences, his message raw and resonant. God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. But ignore the assignment, and the regret will haunt you. I almost lost my family, my purpose. Don't wait for rock bottom. In his 50s, Marcus faced his greatest test, a health scare: prostate cancer. As he lay in the hospital, surrounded by Elena, the kids, now adults with families of their own, and a room full of former mentees, now lawyers, teachers, pastors, he reflected on the journey. "I regretted the years I wasted," he whispered to Jamal, now leading the ministry. "But God turned ashes to beauty." On his last day, as the sun set over Atlanta, Marcus closed his eyes, the voice returning one final time. "Well done, good and faithful servant. You chose wisely." His legacy lived on, a testament to every chosen one. The prophetic assignment isn't a suggestion, it's a lifeline. Ignore it, and regret shadows your steps. Embrace it,
and watch God rewrite your story into something eternal. But this tale isn't Marcus's, it's yours. That tug in your heart, the dream that won't die, God is speaking. The choice is now. Will you rise or live with the echo of what might have been?